Hello and thank you for joining me today. Today I am sharing with you a small mixed media shaker canvas that I created using lots of Renea's beautiful products, and as you can see, the focal point of my canvas is that beautiful shaker clock. I started with my canvas by assembling most of my clock off camera and dyeing the pieces black. I just sprayed it with a little bit of Lindsay's Stamp King spray. And I added some tiny metal gears, some chunky glass glitter, and a few cogs. And here I'm showing you the pieces of beautiful board and the fairy and the roses that I'm planning on using for this canvas. I do use several other products that I don't show here, but I wanted you to have kind of an idea of the pieces that I'm working with. Now I'm not 100% sure where I'm going with this canvas at this point in time, so I'm starting by just doing a little bit of random stamping in the background, and I'm just using a waterproof black ink. I followed my stamping up with a little bit of texture using some plaster paste and a stencil from Prima. I wasn't too particular with it. I just wanted to make sure that I got some texture on the back on this canvas. So you can see I'm just roughly putting this in here and quickly moving across the canvas. I followed that up with a couple pieces of resin from the Numerals collection from a redesigned mold with Prima. Now you can see that I'm adding a tiny bit of color to this canvas. I'm going to quickly dry this and I'm going to place the shaker. I'm trying to see if I like the way the shaker looks on top of this color, because the shaker is clear on both sides and I want to see how it's going to look. I decide quickly that I don't like it, and I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do, because now this has thrown my plan for this canvas out of whack and I'm not sure what to do. So while I'm thinking, I go ahead and assemble my shaker. I have a tiny butterfly in there. I have some rhinestones on the butterfly. I have my cogs in place and all my glitter and my beads. So I'm going to close it before something happens to the shaker, because my desk is a hot mess when I create, and you know, anything can happen. So I go ahead and attach it. And those of you who know how to assemble a shaker clock know that I just made a mistake. And so I will attach a video below and you will see the proper way to do it, because Renee will show you. I do fix it later, but those who know I just made a mistake with my shaker clock. Anyhow, so I'm going to continue to add color, because not only have I decided that I don't like the shaker clock color coming through this way, I don't really like just this color. I want something much deeper. So I'm going to go ahead and add some liquid acrylics, and I'm using the mix of avocado green, burnt sienna, and umber. So you can see I'm just randomly putting it on here, and it really kind of looks like camouflage, which is, you know, it's suited for this because it's kind of like a woodland fairy in my mind. Anyhow, so now I've decided I'm going to paint the back of this shaker clock with this bright, vibrant sparks green paint, and I believe it's fairy wings. And I'm letting that dry to the side for just a second to see if I like it. And I'm going to continue to add my beautiful board to my canvas. And I did trim these a little bit, and I broke one a little bit just so I could tuck it in here and there. There's the back of my shaker, and I'm adding a piece of tin foil to the back of the paint, and that's just really going to reflect the light even more and make that green really pop. And I show you here, it's kind of hard to see, but you can really see that green shining in the background. I'm sure there was 100 different ways to do that, but that's the way I did it, and it worked out eventually. But here's the problem. I don't want the clock to be glued on top. It's supposed to be underneath. So I positioned it the way it was supposed to be with the fairy, and she's going to cover my mistake, and I'm going to hot glue this. Those of you who know me know that I hate hot glue. So it's funny that I had to use hot glue to fix this. But it all worked out in the end, so we're going to move on. I'm just continuing to add a color to my canvas and all the beautiful board, and I'm using a mix of Lindsay's, and I'm using a mix of liquid acrylic. And I'm bouncing between these 6 different colors, and they're all listed below. And I know this is extremely tedious, and believe it or not, I sped this up like crazy and I cut a bunch of it out. But to get this look, you really have to kind of layer your colors. So you put a coat on, you dry it, you put another color on, you add some more here, you move it around with water. It's very tedious and it's time consuming, and it does take a ton of time, but it's worth it. I've never been able to duplicate it any other way. It's just placing color where you need it and slowly building it up. And that's just the way I do it. So, sorry. Anyhow, so now I want to add some lace to this because I didn't add a ton of embellishments in the beginning because I wasn't sure how the shaker clock was going to balance. So I didn't really add anything other than the resin numbers. So I need a little bit of filler. And lace is an awesome filler. But I didn't want it to be that plain ivory. I wanted it to match a little bit. I didn't want it to stand out too much. So I'm just using my colors that I've been working with, and I decided I might as well clean my palette out at the same time. So I'm just grunging this little piece of lace up. And then I'm going to cut it into 3 pieces and tuck it around my canvas after it's dry. And now I'm just trying to figure out the placement for my roses. This is the Yellow Wild Rose set, and it comes with a couple white flowers that I didn't use. Here, I'm sure I'll use them in the future. And these beautiful little green stems as well. Or leaves, I guess I should say. And as you can see, I'm just placing these little flowers around my canvas with some gel medium, and I'm working with gel medium because if I don't like the placement of a flower, I have some working time and I can rip it off and move it around. Because again, I'm not 100% sure. I have something in my mind, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work. So I'm adding gel medium, tucking in place, adding gel medium, tucking in place. Because after all, the only thing that I'm 100% sure of is that my vintage fairy bell is going to go across to the number 3 where I cut that clock in half. But, so there you can see I added a little bit of a curlicue in that rose across the number 1, and now you can see that I'm starting to tuck in the lace that I dyed earlier. And I'm just bunching it up and pushing it in place with a little bit of gel medium. It doesn't really seem like you can see it, but up close you can, and it adds a ton of texture and detail. Anytime you can add another substrate or kind of texture to a canvas, it's good. So adding the fabric with the resin and the wood and the flowers, it just adds a little bit. I'm not sure, I can't think of the word, I'm sorry. But it mixes it up and it makes it not so dull. But here I'm just coloring my title with an alcohol marker that matches the canvas, and it's a quick, easy way to alter this chipboard because it does have that white base to it. So it takes alcohol markers very, very well. So there's a little tip there, and it's super, super quick and easy. Here I am going to go ahead and start adding some gel medium around my canvas. And this is so I can start placing some art stones. I'm using art stones because there's little places in the canvas that just look empty to me. And it's because I didn't use a ton of embellishments, and I didn't really build up the background before I added my focal point. So there's parts that just kind of look bare to my eye. So the easiest way for me to fix that is using micro beads or art stones or things like that, or by tucking ribbon or lace in, and I've done that and I still am not 100% satisfied. So that's why I'm adding in the art stones here. I'm starting with some mega stones because they take up a bunch of room, and that's really what I need to happen here. So I'm just pushing the mega stones into my gel medium, and I'm really kind of carefully placing them exactly where I want them to go. So it is taking a little bit more time. And then I moved on to the regular size art stones. After they were dried, I didn't really like the way they looked just white sitting there. So because this canvas already has so much white space, so I wanted to make sure, I wanted to add a coordinating color on it. So I added a darker brown from Lindsay's Stamp Gang. I cannot talk tonight. And it really does add a lot of depth to the stones. And it was just what I needed there. So you'll see me just adding a little bit of color on top of the stones. And now I'm going to go ahead and add some sparkle. And I'm doing that with a little bit of sparkle, what's it called? It's not sparkle, it's unicorn hair. And it's a Sparks paint, so it's got a ton of mica in it. And you can see that I'm just taking my paintbrush and I'm kind of dipping it in and twisting and rolling it across the canvas. And I'm just trying to kind of get the flow from the main cluster across to the small title. Kind of trying to drag your eye across the canvas. So you can see I'm just like dragging your eye to the title of the canvas, if that makes sense. Next, I start tucking in these little daisies, and I believe that's actually what they're called. They're tuck-in daisies, maybe? But I love them. They're so stinking adorable. And I did add a tiny bit of glossy accents to the center of the daisies off camera, and you don't see me do that because I was trying to trim the video down as much as I could, because you don't really catch everything, and you hate to make a video be too long, and yada yada yada. Anyhow, it was an easy way to give them a little bit of a pop. So just a tiny bit of glossy accents. So anyways, I'm adding some splatters with that same paint, and I'm just using a piece of acetate to cover my fairy and my clock, because I don't want any splatters on top of my clock or my fairy. And I save that acetate for the next time, and that is my way of protecting what I'm covering. And now I'm just adding a little bit of that same paint across the top of my roses. So I'm just dry brushing that on very gently, and I'm using a tiny, tiny fan brush because that's the easiest way that I've found to do it. And I'm just moving around all my roses. And now I'm adding these tiny little not fairies, they're butterflies. I add in 3 little white butterflies. And again, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what that's called, but it will be in the description box below. And I'm going to go ahead and add all my beads and baubles and opals and all those yummy little bits that you can find in Renea's shop, and you will see linked below. But I'm just very delicately and very stingily, that's probably not a word. Anyways, I'm placing them around my canvas, and I'm just trying to add that little bit of sparkle. I'm going to go ahead and add some glossy accents on top of my title, and that's going to give it the pop that it's looking for. And the trick is, don't touch it. Just leave it be once it's in place, and it will dry up to a perfect shine. Adding some more glossy accents around my roses on top of my clock, and that's so I can start adding lots and lots of glitter on my roses and on my clock and everywhere that glitter needs to be, which is everywhere, because glitter is your friend. But lots of chunky crushed diamonds all over the canvas. Sprinkle, 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 and some gold micro beads as well. One of the last touches I add is a little bit of aged brass wax, and that's just to kind of bring up some of the stencil work that I did and to make those numbers pop. Not a lot, just a little bit to grunge it up just a tiny, tiny bit and add a little bit of shine on the clock. I'm just using my finger and working the wax around the canvas. And then I'm going to edge the around the canvas with some distress ink. And that's really it. You know, this canvas had a lot of boo-boos, but in the end, it turned out beautifully. I actually love it. You know, it's hard to make something that's ugly with Renea's products. She has amazing products. A little bit of distress ink around the edge finishes it off, and that's it. That's all she wrote. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you haven't already, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing. If you have any questions or comments, please list them below. I love to read them and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you so much again for your time. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.